one reason that I wanted to say a little bit more about Swann's Way is I inadvertently, I think, completely forgot to mention the most famous thing that happens in Swann's Way, probably in all of the 3,000 pages of Proust, which is the Madeleine scene. Now, basically, what this is as a 30 ish something man, uh, the main character comes back to visit his mother. And in doing so, it's a wet, rainy day, and he's soaked. And, his mother gives him a cup of tea and a cookie to, uh, sort of revive him, I guess, sort of warm him up. And it's just a trivial thing. It's the kind of thing that shouldn't make any kind of impact on anyone, shouldn't be important at all. And that's actually how it's presented, as something that is trivial. But something about the taste of that cookie and that tea, and it's a very specific kind of cookie and Madeleine, and a very specific kind of tea that his Aunt Leonie used to give him when he was little. That taste of that cookie soaked in that tea brings back a wealth of childhood memories. And that is the impetus for basically the entire book. Well, as I said last time, it begins with the only moment he remembers from his childhood, which is the time that he didn't get his goodnight kiss from his mom because Swann came to visit. But what he remembers when he eats this cookie is an entire range of childhood memories that involve his mother, Swann, Gilbert, the woman that the girl that he first loves, his first love, uh, and his maid, Francois, his grandmother, his father, and Swann's Way, or the Méséglise Way, and the Gramantes Way. Um, Now, I think I mentioned this. So they're at a house in Cambrai in the beginning, and that's what his memories are: his childhood in Cambrai. And he's a sickly child. He spends a lot of time in bed, a lot of times sick. And one of the things that the family does. Now, remember, this is I don't know, roughly 1890s or so. It's hard to pinpoint the exact date from just reading the book. I suppose that in the critical work, based on references to the Dreyfus Affair and other things, and other references to French history and French nobility at the time, or perhaps something in Proust's letters or other work, tells you specifically when it happens. But just from reading it, all you can really tell is maybe like the 1890s. Um, the Dreyfus Affair happened in 1894, 1895, and extended on until about 1905 or so, when some resolutions began to happen with it. But the main point of the Dreyfus Affair was right around just before the turn of the century, right around the 1895 through 1900 was the main point, the main part. That's when it was really debated hotly. Okay, and so later on, when the main character is a young man, hard to say again for sure how old, but when he's a young man first entering into society, the Dreyfus Affair is very much on people's minds. So you can set that part of the book probably sometime between 1895 and 1900, which means this part of the book, which is maybe 5 years earlier, must be sometime in the late 1880s or 1890s. Now, if there's a scholar out there who knows specifically more about this, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. I am basing that opinion of the time frame of the book entirely on the book itself. And other than the fact that those are the things that were being talked about, I'm not that sure that it's meant to be a look at that part in French history. Although if it is, that's a very interesting idea, because France, the Dreyfus affair showed that some of France's ideals about itself were faulty. And that sense of some kind of disconnect between oneself and one's appearance being such a critical factor in the book is therefore somewhat mirrored in that political discussion, one might say. Now, what do I mean by France was, not kind of appeared differently than its self-presentation? Kind of was different from self-presentation. France presented itself as an egalitarian society, as an enlightened society, as a society of rational beings, and this had, since the time of the French Revolution, about a century before, and the Napoleonic wars that came after, France had been through quite a bit of turmoil. There had been the end of empire with the rise of the Revolutionary Republic. And then Napoleon had co-opted that and taken over as emperor. And then after Napoleon was finally deposed, there came a restoration of monarchy first, I believe, and then that fell apart, and a republic appeared, and then a commune took over for a very brief period, and then monarchy. Anyway, it was a chaotic up and down kind of thing until the end of the French and Prussian War, which France lost very badly, very, very badly in the 1870s. And in 1879, I believe it is, they outlawed the monarchy for good and established the republic for good. But the French Republic, I don't know which one it was at the time, because French politics is complicated, and unless you are an expert in it, it gets very confusing. But there are like 5 or 6 different republics between the time of Napoleon and the First Republic and the present. And each one had a constitution, but this constitution tended to focus on those ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Okay, and so that was how France saw itself. It saw itself as enlightened. Okay, and so for it to be engulfed in this anti-Semitic scandal dealing with the false accusation of a soldier of treason because he was Jewish becomes something of a moment for France to sort of do a little bit of navel gazing and say, who are we really? And the anti-Semitism in France became very organized at this time, but shortly after, about by 1905, by the end of this period when the Dreyfus affair really comes to some kind of resolution firmly, the anti-Semitism, although still there, fell apart in terms of organization. And the military, although still plagued with its aristocratic backbone and that sort of thing, began to become more modern and more focused on a meritocracy and less focused on that kind of grand republic kind of mentality. All for the good for France. But Proust is writing this novel, remember, in the 19-teens and 1920s. That's when he's writing, 19-teens and 1920s. And he's looking back 10 years, 20 years to a previous time period. And his main character is looking back as well. And so looking back at this sort of, this more innocent time period before all of these things came to light. And that's exactly what I think Swann's way is meant to be. It's meant to have, I think, a certain amount of innocence about the social ramifications of what he's seeing. So, although the main character is aware that Swann is Jewish, and he does hear conversations about the Dreyfus affair and that kind of thing, I don't think that the young boy depicted here is supposed to be really cognizant of what those things mean. Now, the older narrator, definitely, but the boy, no, I don't think so. And the same thing is true of the meaning of some of the things that are said about the characters, particularly the women. He's a boy, and his attraction to girls is more of an instinctive kind of attraction to an otherness than anything else. Now, it should be noted that at least as is depicted in this novel, the main character has no young male friends. He associates with adults. I mean, no friends. He doesn't go to any kind of a formalized school. Whatever education he receives at home or from tutors, I suppose. That detail is probably in there somewhere, but I don't remember exactly. So it is this leisure, idle class that basically has nothing to do that he is writing about. And so as the novel continues, you'll see it in Swann's way. And as you proceed further in the other novels in this series, you will see it increasingly. The main character is narcissistic, he is misogynistic, he is classist, he is world weary and bored. Anything that he tends to like, he starts to dislike because he likes it too much. You know, he builds up an ideal of it in his head, and the reality never matches the ideal. In fact, that is one of the crucial themes of the novel, it seems to me, is that the thing we build up as an ideal is never as good as, I mean, it's always better than the real. The real can never match the ideal. And I suspect one way to think about that Proust may have wanted us to see is that sense of purity, that sense of like pure love, of pure desire, of pure excitement, of pure whatever, that seems to be part of what humans desire. It can't be fulfilled. It's just not there. And this way, I think that you can see Proust fitting into not only some of what other thinkers were doing at the time. Freud, I think, had a similar concept. And I definitely think that if you keep moving further into the future, people like Lacan and Derrida definitely are focused on this kind of, you know, the pure. The pure can't exist, that the pure is an ideal. So in a way, you could see this as even harking back to something like Plato and the ideal, you know, and Kant and the thing in itself. Is the thing in itself really what we want to know? Or is what we want the appearances? You know, in Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel takes that thing in itself and flips it on his head and says that if there is a thing in itself that's different from the appearance, I'll never know it because the way I react to a thing is the appearance that I see of it. Now, I'm paraphrasing a long and complicated book, and maybe poorly, but at least the part of it I read, that's what I got out of it. And so, in a way, we're dealing here with, you know, what is reality? Is reality the appearance? Is it what we make of it? Or is there some fundamental thing going on underneath it? And, you know, as we get further into this book, I think that is really where Proust is wanting to take us. You know, what is it that is real? Okay? And in this way, I think he's chosen a main character who is, I don't know, corrupt. He is, I'm morally corrupt. He's not financially corrupt or anything like that. He's just morally corrupt. He is a jerk, plainly speaking. He's a jerk. And part of that is that Freudian kind of your unconscious brain is what is motivating what you're doing, your unconscious desires. And so that is part of what Proust is trying to do is showing underneath these genteel manners, underneath this polite way of reacting to people, there's this hidden valley of desire, and that's really what he's getting at. And remember, like with Lacan, that desire is unfulfillable. And I think that really and truly, that is the kind of ideal that Proust is dealing with here. So, in Swann's way, what we have here is this return back to an understanding of childhood through this moment of the tea-dipped Madeleine in order to build up the character. So you are what you remember that you are. You are the buildup of the experiences and the memories that you've had. And this harkens right back to William James. This harkens right back to Freud, going back into childhood to determine who the person is. And there's definitely some Oedipal stuff going on with the character and his mom. There's definitely some Oedipal stuff going on with the character and his dad, and that sort of complex. But it's time to end this, and we'll continue this discussion when we get to the second book, which is called In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. And if that title strikes you as a little bit creepy, good, because it is. And I think that to Proust's credit, it is definitely meant to be. All right. Of course, as usual, any thoughts and comments, feel free to leave. And have a good night.